Well, hello everybody. It's Matthew Street and welcome to my channel. I really appreciate you being here. And this, folks, will be my celebration and tribute to George Harrison on his birthday. Well, today it is February 24th, and I know there's a lot of controversy about whether George was born on February 25th, 1943 or the 24th. You know, depending on what biography you read or whatever book you look at, it changes. But I'm just going to go with it today. I was watching a video by my friend Joe earlier, Mr. Mayo, and he posted a tribute to George today on the 24th. So I said, whether it's the 24th officially or the 25th, I'm just going to post it now so it's out there. Happy birthday, George. I hope you'll all enjoy this video, and I'm hoping George will too, wherever he may be. Rest in peace. Okay, I am calling this video George Harrison and Matthew Street, the high school years. But I'll probably shorten it in the title. I'll probably say George Harrison, the high school years. Now, why am I calling it that? Any of you that are familiar with my channel, you must know of my series called Matt Mangles McCartney. That's where I take each of Paul's album releases and I relate to what was happening in my life at the time Paul's album came out. Paul has had so many albums from 1970 up till McCartney 3 that I can go through just about my entire life with Paul's releases and my life intertwining. But with George, it's a little different. He only released really 10 studio albums. So to do a George or a Matt Mangles George or something, it would be kind of, I don't know, I just don't see the point in doing something like that. But I thought I'd do a mini version of that today with my George Harrison, the high school years. I'm going to take the 4 albums that were released while I was in high school by George and relate to what was happening in my life. So I hope you'll enjoy it, and it's my little tribute to George on his birthday. Now you have to understand, folks, I graduated from middle school, 8th grade, in spring of 1975. I came from a very small Catholic school during middle school. There were maybe 15 kids in the entire class, split like, 7 boys, 8 girls, or vice versa. We were a very tight-knit group, all close, the boys and the girls. We all got along, and we all came from several different towns, and it was just a tight-knit little group. And when we graduated that spring of 75, going into the summer, the music of that time, just picture it. You know the beautiful music if you're from that era of the summer of 75. Wow, the pop music and the rock that was out there then, so wonderful, so joyous. And anytime I hear any of those songs from that period, it takes me right back to that summer between 8th grade and going into high school. Wow, it really warms my heart. Well, coming into September of 1975, I was about to enter freshman year of high school, and some of the kids in that group of 15 in middle school went on to public school, but about a little over half of us went to the local Catholic high school. Now, it was a great school, and a school I'm so happy and so grateful that my parents sent me to, but it was much bigger than where we came from, obviously. We came from a class of 15 in 8th grade. Now I'm entering a class of like 220 in high school, which may seem small to many of you that went to these gigantic public high schools. A class of 220 must seem like, wow, that's nothing. But to me, coming from a class of 15 into a class of 220 was a bit overwhelming. The school was very big. You were separated by your knowledge level, I guess you could call it. Like if you weren't so good in math, you went in a class with this group of math. If you were excellent at science, you went in this group. English, everything was different. And so a lot of us got split up from that 8th grade class. Some of us might be in a class on this side of the building, that side of the building. So when I get there, I'm in classes with people I don't know. I have no idea who they are. They come from many different towns into this Catholic, local, regional Catholic high school. So it was very daunting, and it was very overwhelming and very stressful for a young 14-year-old, which I was at the time, to do that. But I gotta say, I heard that fall that George was coming out with a new album. And that new album was Extra Texture, which I have right here. Released on September 22nd, 1975, right after I entered high school. And man, I was excited about this album because I had had his last album, which came out like a year or more earlier. I'm not sure if I was in 7th or 8th grade when that one came out. It was 1974, and it was Dark Horse. And that album was okay. I did like, the songs on it, and I had it. I think I had the cassette at the time my parents got me. But I was very excited about this coming out because the single, You, came out a couple of weeks before this, I believe, in earlier September, right when I was coming into freshman year. And that song knocked me out and still does to this day, folks. I remember being that young boy listening to that single, having the single, the 45, and loving it to death. I know there's not a lot of deep lyrics on it. There may be 25 words in the whole song, but the way it's produced, the way George put it together, the way he wrote it and plays on it, it's just a fabulous, fabulous single. One of those singles that just makes you smile, makes you feel good. And I'll tell you, it gave me some hope and gave me some of that positive vibe I needed coming into my first year of high school. And I loved it. And to this day, that lead-off track on this album, You, is one of my favorite George Harrison songs of all time, and I will always cherish it. However, when the album came out, and this is an original, this one has the textured feel to it, but this is a later pressing. I do have an original pressing that I got way back, but it's got a little damage to it. One of the pieces of paper missing from it. This is an original has the die cut on it. But when the album came out, folks, I was pretty bummed out about it because at that age, 14, being excited about new music at the time and what was happening in the music world, when I heard You, George to me was right there contemporary with that single. I said, yeah, he's on it. He's got it. But when this came out a couple of weeks later, my heart sank a little bit, folks, because nobody was buying this. I mean, other kids liked the single You. It was played on the radio all the time. I think You reached halfway up the top 40. I think it made number 20, which is a travesty. That song deserved top 10 status for sure. But it made number 20 or so, I believe. And it just bummed me out because the album just isn't that good. There's maybe 3 or 4 songs You I love, and there may be 2 or 3 others I can tolerate. But this album as a whole is a big, big bummer, folks. A big disappointment. I love the design of it. This is one of the best album designs ever by George. I love the cover. I love the way it's put together. But the album, the material in here just doesn't live up to it. Doesn't live up to the hype of that first single, You. And I just feel sad for that. I mean, he even released a second single from this that December of 75, This Guitar Can't Keep From Crying, which is one of the songs I do semi-enjoy. It didn't even chart, folks. But I was happy to have that single by George, and I did have the album. It was part of my collection. Freshman year, I was busy with stuff, getting into basketball tryouts for the freshman team, meeting new friends, staring at girls in the cafeteria. Yeah, that was a big thing that I remember doing. There was this one girl, cute little blonde girl with a very platinum blonde hair, nice long flowing hair, and I remember her sitting across, several tables away. Every day, you know how you're like creatures of habit, you sit in the same little area in the cafeteria with the same group of friends and kids, little cliques and stuff. And she was, way on the other side of the cafeteria, and I wasn't a stalker or anything, folks, okay? I wasn't that bizarre, but a young kid, 14 years old, first time, you see, girls like that, and you're like, I just remember staring at this cute little blonde girl across the way, and she seemed so like a world away. Like I could never meet her, never have any interaction with her. But I just would look over at her and just dream about, boy, I wish I could, meet someone like that. Weren't we so silly back then, folks? 30 feet away from me, and it seemed like a universe. But anyway, that was a good year, and meeting kids and making new friends and all. And I'll always think of the single You more than the album when I think of that period of my life. But, as time went by and we came into 1976, and now I'm finishing up my freshman year, coming into my sophomore year. And I remember, now you're getting a little older, I'm 15 years old now, and I'm starting to meet girls and make little girlfriends, and I'm solidifying my friendships with the new people I've met over the past year or so, like I'm sure many of you did. I remember getting involved with a couple of nice guys that got me involved in an Explorer post. I don't know if you've ever heard of those, but it's similar to the Boy Scouts, only it's a little bit on a different plane, a little different level than Boy Scouts. And the one I got involved in was a rescue and first aid type Explorer post. So, that got me interested in, public service and helping others and stuff like that. But, I just remember it was such a great time coming into the bicentennial, 1976, and starting my sophomore year that fall. And all of a sudden we get wind that George is going to be coming out with a best of album. November 8th, 1976, here it is, Best of George Harrison. The best of, I should say, the best of George Harrison. Here's the back. And folks, this album, I remember being very disappointed with it at the time. You might be saying, Matt, how? It's George Harrison. Folks, I didn't like the way they shortchanged George on his solo material. Half this album is George Beatles songs and half is George solo songs. That's a travesty. I mean, even for Ringo, Blast From Your Past, he gets all Ringo solo songs. Why in the world could they not put all George solo songs on this album is beyond me. It's a travesty. He had plenty of great songs that could have gone on the best of. It's not like it said greatest hits, and they all had to be top 10 hits. It says best of. They could have come up with another 5 or 6 tracks to replace the Beatle tracks. So I was disappointed in this, but I did buy it, and I did enjoy it. It went gold, but I think it made number 31 on the charts, which was a 30. Extra Texture made like number 8, which I'm shocked. It made top 10. It's not that good. But then George must have been so bummed out when he saw that fall of 76, this coming out like this. And he's trying to release a new album right around the same time, because only a couple of weeks later, on November 24th, he comes out with 33 1/3, which did pretty good. It made number 11. It also went gold. And this is a return to form for George. After this kind of abysmal album, he comes out with this thing that's so fantastic. It got great reviews all around. I loved this album when it came out. Sophomore year of high school, like I said. I loved it. To this day, this song made top 40. Cracker Box Palace, top 40. Making new friends. Everything was the world was looking bright, folks, for that young high schooler. And George was right there with me because this album was on my playlist all the time. It was on that turntable. It was in my cassette deck. I loved it. And never had the 8-track. I never had an 8-track player, but I had the cassette and I had the vinyl. And this album will always be in the tops of my George Harrison picks for best albums. Loved it. Well, high school goes on all in all, and sophomore year turns into junior year and making new friends, and then senior year comes along, fall of 1978, going into your senior year, and there's big changes coming, right? You start to get nervous. What's going to happen? I remember I had a little girlfriend the beginning of my senior year, and by the second half of senior year coming into 1979, we had broken up. It was nothing anyway. It was one of those stupid teenage romances that amounts to nothing. She had a personality like wet toast anyway, which I don't, so that never would have worked. If you know me, I couldn't be with someone like that. You gotta have a little more fire in your belly and personality to be with me. But anyway, she was gonzo, and graduation's coming, and that you're leaving your boyhood, your childhood, and once you graduate high school, it's time to become a man. Well, for most of us anyway. You gotta become a man and grow up a little bit, and it's either off to college or off to a career or a trade school or whatever you're gonna do. So it's scary times, folks. And for me, though, it wasn't that. I went a different route. I joined the United States Air Force, as many of you know, coming into 1979. I knew it was coming. I had signed up in advance, and I knew when I graduated a month later, I'd be gone. And I'll tell you though, coming into that second half of senior year and early part of 1979, on February 20th, 1979, George released what I think is one of his finest albums ever, the George Harrison album. Another travesty, like 33 1/3 only made 11, should have been number 1. This only made number 14, folks, on the US charts. Travesty, should have been number 1, should have been number 1. Great, great album. Blow Away, top 40 song. I think he tried to release another single, Love Comes to Everyone. Didn't chart, which is a shame because every song on this album is great. And I'll tell you folks, I love this album. It got me through that second half of senior year in high school, knowing what was coming after graduation. I'd be joining the military. This was the soundtrack of that year for me, folks. Leaving that childhood, going into manhood, going into the United States military. This album was right there with me, and it kept me strong, and it kept me grounded. It kept me solid, and I love it. And I will always be grateful to George and this album for coming out right at the right time for me as I was in that second half of my senior year in 1979. But then you graduate. I had to go into the service. I went overseas for 2 years to the United Kingdom. As many of you know, George was right there with me. Always had his music with me. Leaving everyone behind, friends, family, and whatnot. There was no internet then. There was no FaceTime. There was no Zooming. It's all letter writing or the occasional long-distance phone call over the waters, which was very expensive back then. 79 going into 1980. You just didn't pick up your cell phone and, hey, how you doing? No texting. Oh, so you were like on another planet when you were overseas. But I got through it, and George helped me. He was there for me all the way. Always with me. His music always making me smile, always uplifting, always spiritual, which is what I needed. Deep within my soul, he touched me, and I'll always be forever grateful to George for that and his music. So George, happy birthday. May you rest in peace. I know you're in heaven. We love you. I love you. We love your music, and we'll always be thinking of you on this day and every day. Thank you, George, and thank all of you. Bye-bye.